The topic of my PhD is to looking at greenhouse opportunities for greenhouse vegetable production in Australia's temperate regions. Well, I did my master's study in the Netherlands, where you can find a greenhouse everywhere, and Dutch people have been benefiting from greenhouse products for many years. So they kind of like greenhouse. What about Australian people? So since I started my PhD, I have been talking to so many people about my project. They are my colleagues, my housemates, and the researchers from other departments, even the strangers that I met at airport. Just want to know what they think about greenhouse here. So, it's kind of fun. In the meantime, I received a lot of questions. They are very interesting. So I put some questions here. I would say some of them are kind of misunderstanding about greenhouse, and some of them are just simply don't know how to respond to that. For example, the greenhouse is ugly looking. It's really personal. I don't know how to explain that. So I'm not going to clean up these confusions in today's presentation, but it gives you an idea of what people think about greenhouse in Australia. And this is also one of the most important reasons that we are doing this research. Apparently, in Australia, people don't really know what greenhouse is and what greenhouse can do. So I shall start with a broad concept called protected cultivation, then we narrow down to greenhouse. So protected cultivation is defined as agricultural activities taking place under covers. As you can see from pictures, it ranges from a low-tech, not climate-controlled sheet house, plastic tunnels, to medium or high-tech greenhouse covered with glass or plastic. The last one shows you the most recent technology. It's called vertical farming. It's completely indoor protected cultivation. It's very popular in condensed cities like New York, Tokyo, etc. So in my research, we are looking at the greenhouse that we call climate controlled. What you can see on the second line. So what's happening in Australia? As you can see, the greenhouse has so far bypassed in Australia in most states, especially in New South Wales, South Australia, Victoria, and Tasmania. It's around 17 commercial greenhouses in Australia, about 200 hectares, among which 17% is dedicated to vegetable production, and tomato is a major greenhouse crop in Australia. So, as we all know, greenhouse is very expensive to build and operate. But according to the message from industry, there are several considered interests and business opportunities on investing in greenhouse in Australia. So why is that? Let's move to the driving forces behind those developments. First of all, the Australian consumers have very strong desire for local produced food with high quality. And the major retailers like supermarkets, they are trying to shorten the supply chain, which associated with the end-up price of the product, and supply year-round. Besides, the growers are seeking for market opportunities and expanding the growing season. The last one is also the most important one, is there has been rising awareness of sustainability among the public. For instance, major stakeholders and government. The people are not only paying attention to the food quality, but also the way that food is produced. So greenhouse is very likely to meet all these requirements, but there's no evidence that can prove this is the more sustainable way to produce food. But this is exactly what people care about. So we start with the literature study, and we found the difficulties to motivate this study because of the little research has been conducted on this area and the lack of information from industry. For instance, the most information sources were consultant, and the data is not always reliable. Plus, the environmental consequences of a greenhouse production system has not yet been quantified in Australia. So Therefore, we formulate our research objective is to evaluate existing greenhouse in Australian temperate regions where the most greenhouse are located, taking into account the environmental consequences, economic benefits, and crop yield. So according to the different focuses in our research, I divided the objective into 4 sub-objectives. As you can see from the framework of this research, regarding to the environmental consequences study, instead of only looking at the greenhouse production, we also compare greenhouse with conventional open field. So, and next we are going to look around the all greenhouse across 4 states, which is relevant to the climate, local conditions. And besides, we will be looking at the greenhouse productivity with evaluating the crop yield and indoor climate to see how accurate the greenhouse operates. The last one is it will be conducted with the data collected from the first 3 research objectives. So we will conduct the scenario studies, focus on accessing the suitable locations for the future greenhouse plan. So each objective links the different research methods I will talk about later. So in my first year, I pretty much spent a half year on developing the suitable research methods for this research. Regarding to the environmental consequences, we are going to use a life cycle assessment approach following the international standard. It can be concluded 4 phases, which you can see in the diagram. It starts with defining the goal and scope of this analyzed system. And next, the inventory analyze, impact assessment. Afterwards, we will discuss all these impact factors. So we also will do the economic performance, just to use a simple cost-benefit analysis. So in order to find how to define the suitable scope of the research, I went to the Netherlands, and where I have been closely working with the leading researchers from Spain, Dr. Juan Montero and Dr. Sonia Anton, and Dr. Oliver Kuhner from Denmark. So we finally decided to looking at the tomato greenhouse. It's climate controlled, at least with 4 elements, because this kind of greenhouse is a major type of greenhouse that the Australian farmers are shifting to, and also it's very comparable to the studies that has conducted in other countries. Okay, so this is a diagram that shows you how life cycle assessment approach works. As you can see, the input is energy and resource, output is tomato and emissions. And this diagram tells you how the energy and the resource is consumed in this whole system. The different components is involved, like greenhouse infrastructure and different control system and the waste management. So during this period, we will analyze the inventory involved in this whole system, and afterwards we got the data and we will analyze the impact assessment and cost-benefit analysis. So regarding to the emissions that we analyzed, we selected these categories which are most relevant to agriculture activities. As you can see, we selected for the water use and energy, and the soil, global warming, etc. Okay, so the next research method we're going to use is modeling study. So the model is selected from, is developed by the Van Hoor in 2011 from Wageningen University. The purpose of this modeling study is to firstly evaluate the greenhouse productivity and the operations in greenhouse by comparing the real data we collected from greenhouse and the simulated data. in terms of crop yield and indoor climate. And in last, we're gonna do some scenario studies with this model, focusing on the searching suitable locations for future greenhouse. Okay, so this is the overview of the model design. This model is originally developed for greenhouse design, but it also can be used to study the performance of existing greenhouse. As you can see, it consists of 3 components, or we call submodels: greenhouse climate, and tomato yield, and economic model. The input data is outdoor climate and climate management greenhouse design. It's kind of, the virtual greenhouse you can set up in this model. So, and the output tells you if the greenhouse design is optimal or not. So it's integrate model. Regarding to the greenhouse productivity, and we're gonna only use the greenhouse climate model and the tomato model to compare the data from simulated and real data. Afterwards, we will identify the feasible solutions to improve the performance of existing greenhouse. And in the scenario studies, we're going to use the whole integrated model, including economic model. So after go through the whole model, we will get the optimal greenhouse design according to local conditions. After that, this greenhouse will be evaluated by the life cycle assessment approach to see if this greenhouse meets if it's sustainable according to the international standard. Okay, so these are some innovative aspects in my research, or should I call it a contribution to the industry? So first, we are going to provide strong evidence of environmental consequences of Australian greenhouse industry. In other words, the major retailers will get the social license to operate the glasshouse products. And secondly, we will identify the feasible solutions to improve existing greenhouse. And the last one is kind of output of scenario studies. It will outline the opportunities and risks in future greenhouse industry. So here are a couple of things I will do in this year. The first life cycle assessment will be conducted in Tasmania greenhouse. And we still keep looking for the representative greenhouses in New South Wales, Victoria, and South Australia. In August, I will be giving the oral presentation in an international conference in China. So this is basically I have achieved in my first year of PhD and what I'm going to do in this year. Okay, so lastly, I would thank to our research founder, Uwers, and all my supervisors, the colleagues from ARC Training Center, and it's special thank to the Dr. Juan and Dr. Ansonia from Spain, and Dr. Bert Van Oster from Wageningen, who has been assisting me in modeling study. So thank you very much.